Right, we are live with the one, the only Bonzoleum. How you doing, my friend? We had all kinds of problems with the audio. It wasn't working, and we still don't know what happened. How's it? Yeah. Did you try restarting your computer? Can't hear him. I'm getting, hold on 1 second. 1 second, I'm getting an message. They can't hear you. 1 sec. Hold on. I got an issue here. Okay, how about now, guys? Go ahead and talk, Terry.
Hello, this is from Chicagoland.
I think we got him.
Do we have it?
I think we got him.
Okay.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. I got stuff coming through. I've got. All right, a little better. They say a little better. Go ahead and keep talking,
Okay.
Terry.
Hello. Sibilance.
Sibilance. Can you guys hear us?
Can I be heard? Hello.
All right. 2112 says, how's it going, Bonzo? 2112 drums. How's it going, Bonzo? All right. Who we got in the chat here? Do you have it up on your preview, Terry? No? Probably not.
Yeah, no, I can see me over there.
Okay. Do you have the... oh, but you don't have it going on your feed. All right. Well, I'm just going to name some people who are on the chat.
Hang on, I should do it on my feed.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
We got Richard Stewart is in the house. You know Richard? He's a big fan. He supports all the YouTube drummers, man. He's a great guy.
You know what? Here, I'm gonna go live. Check this out. We'll do a double live. Is that
all right? Make sure you turn your TV down though. Turn it down or it'll come through. We'll have the old. Can you turn on your radio, please?
Oh yeah, here we go. Oh yeah, okay. So all right, let me do this. So what I can do is, hang on a second here. Let's see about live chat. What should I call this? Live chat double?
Sure, that works.
Double. Let's see what happens. So I'm now done.
Oh, you got it going on yours too.
I
don't know if it's gonna come through.
Oh no, that's not okay. Well, I don't know, but I don't want to take away from yours though. So no, we don't want to do that. Fuck that.
I don't know. I got a weird echo going on though, and I don't know why.
Is it okay? How about now? We good now?
No, it's on my end. This one's on my end, and I'm not sure.
Maybe when you were trying to fix the problem in mine, we might have inadvertently adjusted something in your end.
Yeah. Okay. But now I got a feeling they can't hear you if I do this. Yeah, they can't hear you. So some reason I gotta do this. All right. So I'm gonna do one thing here.
Okay. Whatever you gotta do, take your time. We're very patient. You're John Vandenberg.
All right. You know what? Screw it. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Satan, come on.
All right. So that was a complete disaster of an intro. All right.
Those are the best ones.
All right. So how's it going, man?
Things are good. Just had dinner, and now I'm just I gotta sell a bunch of gear. I got too much shite down here. I gotta sell some stuff.
Yeah. What are you looking to unload? Because I might know a guy that's interested in some stuff. I might know.
I don't have any vintage stuff anymore. I used to have a lot of vintage stuff, and then I just started. There was one day I was kind of. Remember the scene in The Jerk with Steve Martin when he's like, "Why do you keep bringing me all this old wine? Why don't you bring me some new stuff?" I started getting new stuff, and then so that's kind of all I have now. It's like, well, I do have some Ludwig you know the old Ludwig aluminum Ludloy standard snares?
Yes, I had one. I actually had one at one time. It was a great snare drum.
Yeah, these guys.
Yeah.
I have like 10 of these. 5 are, you know, the raw aluminum like this, and the other ones are chrome. I was going to sell those babies on eBay. They're great drums. I know
You have how many of those do you have?
How many what?
How many of those do you have?
About 10. I got 5 chrome plated, and then 5 not chrome plated. You know what I mean? And what I did was I bought some Ludwig Imperial lugs. They started making the flat Imperial lugs after me and some other guys have been crying about it for 25 years.
Right.
So I'm going to put those on a standard. It'll look really cool. So I was going to keep one of. I think they look really sharp on the aluminum on this guy on the frosted aluminum.
That's the one. I had one of those. That's the one I had. I got rid of it. I loved the drum. I absolutely loved it, but it was I had to do it to actually move an entire drum set. The guy wanted me to throw the thing in. I actually bought a snare drum from you.
Really?
I bought one from you at the
person or online?
In person at the Chicago Drum Show.
Oh, you like 40 years ago?
Like 4 years ago, I bought a Pearl snare drum for you. I didn't even want it. I was just.
No, I remember that. That was the one where I had the Yamahas that were natural. And I had a pile of like old kind of cymbals.
Right, and you had you had a Pearl. It was not the Jupiter. It's the one that looks like the Jupiter, but it's steel.
It was steel. Yeah. Did it have a Slingerland top hoop?
No, it had a regular triple flange hoop. Yeah.
Okay, my Slingerland Stick Saber one I can't find. It's here somewhere. Those are even the steel ones. Those are great drums, man.
It's not a bad drum at all. Like I didn't even like. I was walking through and I'm like. Because I watched you, but I didn't really watch you as much as I do now, and I'm like, and I went up to you. I'm like, you're that YouTube guy.
You're that apoplectic freak. I mean that's you know what I mean. Totally. I mean people there's times now I'll be out and people walk up to me like you're the like I was in Bahamas with my wife and daughter. We're on vacation like 3 years ago. And we're eating breakfast at this table, and I look at a table across the way, and there's this guy keeps looking over. He's with his family, and finally walks over. He's like, he has the British accent. He's like, "Excuse me, are you Bonzoleum?" It was pretty cool. I was like, "Yeah, that's right."
That's actually really funny.
It was funny, man. It was. I was like,
you are, man. You're a celebrity. You probably don't even realize it. You are a celeb, and it's weird because like if you look at the YouTube rules,
a celebrity.
But if you look at the YouTube rules, like you don't do any of that stuff. You know what I mean? You don't have like nice thumbnails and like all this stuff. Because you know why? You got great content and you're entertaining to watch. Like I love you. What happened to the Swass video? You took it down.
Oh my God! You know what? You know what's well? The reason why I did it was getting a lot of comments, and but even like some people here in town, you know, and I just I gotta tell you something. It's 110% true. I don't know what. You know what it was? There's a place not far from. It's an Indian restaurant. I'll just say that. And I was wolfing down. They had like 10. It was like a smorgasbord, like a buffet. And they had like chicken that was in red sauce and yellow sauce and green. And I was going berserker. My wife's like, Jesus, honey, take it easy. I don't know what happened, man. I must have been a Lustra. It's all like I know that sounds so terrible, but I was horrified. I can't believe oh my God. Looking back, I didn't erase the video. I just made it private.
You made it private? I was dying. It was a hilarious story. Greg Garner wants to know, do either you or I have a Ludwig white 10x14 or 9x13 blue olive badge? He's looking for one. I don't. I know I don't.
I actually had a 10x14 that I sold about 3 years ago.
But you don't have it now.
No, I don't have it.
That doesn't do him any good at all.
No, I know. But the good thing is on eBay there should be those do come up. White is relatively popular for one. You know.
2112 Drums has a question. He wants to know, do you prefer the standard or the acrolite? You go first.
You know, I think I prefer the acro. I think sometimes when there's a little more mass to the drum, like the standard lugs are real light, and so that's why I want to see how when I put the Imperials on the standard, I want to see it just changes the way it sounds. You know, sometimes a lot of that can be psychosomatic. Like you just think, oh, here's the standard. You know,
Right.
it shouldn't sound as good because they were cheap. You know. But no, I mean, I love an. In fact, you know what I really love are the Blackrolites. You know the ones from like the late '80s on now, the blacks.
Yes.
One. Those are great drums, man.
I always thought like the standard was actually the one I had, but no, I never had anything but like a remote control sound head on it. So that may have something to do with the but I always thought it was a lot drier and more actually just almost too cracky compared to my acrolites.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. You know, I always had this thing where, I mean, to me it appears to be, it's the exact same gauge as the Supras and the Supers. It just doesn't have the bead.
It doesn't have the
Do you know
bead,
what I mean? And yeah, so I have actually seen somebody somebody posted a picture online, I don't know, about 8 years ago of a 4x14 standard. It was an 8 lug, and it was 4x14. And it had the 8, you know, those flat like porta pack, you know, logs. Those I think I have it in a video somewhere. I don't know. I can't get to the picture now. But it would be sweet, man. Imagine stumbling upon a 6.5x14 standard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That'd be kind of cool if there's one or two of those babies floating around.
It's like the New York school system acrolites, the 6x14s.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen one of those? Like, have you ever come across one of those in your travels over the years?
Yeah, I've seen one at the Chicago Drum Show.
Chicago?
Okay. Had one. You know what's funny though? I did have it. I'm kicking myself in the ass for this. There was a time I bought about 10 years ago, even longer. It was a Supraphonic that somebody had the chrome taken off, but it wasn't buffed like it did. I had some Ludwig Supra shells, both 5 and 6.5. The chrome that's another interesting story too, man. Where I had the chrome taken off, and what they did is they put on a buffing wheel, so it looked real shiny. It almost looked like freshly chrome nickel plate, which was really cool. But this drum, it was a Supraphonic, and it wasn't quite frosty like an anodized acro or standard. It was pretty damn close. So what I did was I put acro lugs on it, or classic lugs, and then I installed a Keystone badge on it with the spacer and the original grommet and stuff, and I put a P83 on it, and I sold it on eBay as a 1960s 10 lug 6.5x14 acrolite reproduction, and I ended up selling. It went for like $110 or something. I was devastated. I mean, it would have been nice to get. You know, I mean, the throw off on it was worth $70 because in those days, you know, the P83s people were paying up the wazoo for them.
Yeah.
And then I had somebody contact me after. I can't remember if it was in person. They're like, "Was that an actual Ludwig shell?" I said, "Well, it wasn't a real acro like I said in the auction. It was you know, I took it. It was a Supra that didn't have any chrome on it, but otherwise everything was authentic Ludwig." And they were pissed. They're like, "Oh man!" Like I think they thought I put it on just like an old like a steel shell.
Yeah.
But everything was genuine. You know what I mean? It was a Ludwig. 6.5x14 shell, the hoops were original, the tone control on it was original, Keystone badge was original, the P83, the butt plate on it were original. I had, you know, 40 strand, you know, and I just ended up giving the thing away. I'm sorry I ever did. It was a great drum.
All right, I have to ask you a question. I promised somebody I would ask it. He can't watch right now. His name is Earl Bennett. I don't know if you're familiar with his YouTube channel. He's kind of newer YouTuber. He's like me. He hasn't been doing it, but he is a wealth of Paiste knowledge.
Oh, God love him, yeah.
He knows a lot about Paiste cymbals. He actually got me to start making the switch from Zildjian to Paiste because
that's cool. Okay.
I was a Zildjian guy. Like, you know, forever I only drove Fords. And then one day I got a Toyota, and I'm like, wow, this is really nice.
Yeah, no, you know what the thing is there's just a way about them.
Yeah.
Even the 602s, there's a 602 sounds like a 602. It has a crystally sound to it that you won't find in most Zildjians anyway. I mean, Zildjian still makes great cymbals. I like Zildjians. I have some here. But you really gotta. The way I always like to describe the process. Zildjian used to beat up on Paiste for the whole cast versus non-cast thing. You probably remember that back in the day. That was a big, almost like Pepsi versus Coke thing they used to blow each other shit for. Paiste essentially would make a big batch of bronze. Well, they'd actually buy it from somebody, which then would be rolled into sheets that then they'd cookie cut, circles, like flat discs that they'd make the cymbals out of. Whereas Zildjian had this metal made in-house, and they poured out like little chocolate chips of bronze, and then roll each little chip, and so each cymbal is individually sort of made that way, the original Zildjian way. And but part of the thing is just because stuff has always been done that way,
right,
and is real expensive, doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, not always. I mean, there's a lot of Zildjians I really like. My favorite pair of 15-inch, new beat hi-hats here. I love them, and I really like the old French symphonics back. I just don't. What happened with Zildjian? It seemed like in the early mid '70s, the cymbals really got bowl shaped to increase the volume. You know what I mean? Like really, you get the bell, which was huge even on an 18, and then you get that, that big huge bow, they just don't sound. There's nothing like a nice 50s or 60s 18 that might be like, 1390 or 1420 grams.
Right.
And I do like the French symphonics because they had a flatter profile too. But just kind of your bread and butter 80s, mid 90s Zildjian. I was playing a kit the other. That video? I made a video the other day over at a place here in town where I was rehearsing with some guys. I snuck in and I was playing the drum kit, and he had a 16-inch crash, 18-inch crash. There were Ks, reissue Ks, and the 20-inch ride is a garden variety Zildjian medium ride, probably from the early 90s, and it just doesn't sound good. No, it's just it was just a batch of those for a long time where they look just so like machine made. And I don't mean that, there's not necessarily anything wrong with the machine-made cymbal, but there was something for a long time. Zildjian redid the A's about 4 years ago now, and they're terrific. Whatever, they made the profiles a little flatter, they adjusted the weights, but there was a long time where, I wouldn't touch, Avitas for a while because they really got kind of cheesy in a weird way.
They seem to be
real heavy. The hats got real heavy.
Yes, the new beats are heavier. I noticed that. Yes.
Yeah, even the redesigned ones are still really heavy, man.
I have noticed that the new beats are heavier. Uzi Boodoo Doodoo says, this is a great name, by the way.
Uzi Boodoo Doodoo.
Sorry I'm so quiet. I don't have the vocabulary and knowledge like Earl, Jeff, and Terry, but if you want to talk about Guitar Hero E-Kit, then I know my shit.
Man, YouTube, so there's so much, I got to tell you, man, I would have killed for YouTube when I was a kid.
Now, let me ask you this. Hold on.
Valuable.
All right, I can't forget to ask this real question, but I got to ask you this real quick. Now, when you were a kid, first learning how to play, okay?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this resource wasn't there. Obvious, and for me, I just kind of, I like when I learn songs, I more just listen to the song and play to the song.
Yeah, right.
So, because this, like I said, this resource wasn't there where I couldn't just go on and look up, the intro to rock and roll doesn't start on one. That's why it's so confusing.
Right.
But now I see all these kids who can just shred, just incredible drummers, right? And they're like 12.
Yeah.
Now, I got to think, as a young drummer, would that have discouraged you, or would that have made you go the other way and really inspired you?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not real competitive, and I'm not the most coordinated. I mean, I'm a terrible athlete. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I mean, if I play basketball, I'm not bad on defense because I can sort of steal the ball. I'm pretty good at kind of getting in there and getting the ball, but once I get it, I don't know what the hell to do with it. I'm useless on offense. I can't dribble for anything. Baseball, I used to be relatively decent. Now I've played softball with some guys the past few years, and I suck horribly. So I don't know. But, the thing is, I think what it is, it's kind of like when you have, when everybody's skill seems to come up, like you get a really good athlete or a really good skilled drummer, it does something on one hand that people see, like, oh, well, that can be done. That person can do it, therefore it's achievable. You know what I mean?
The high tide raises all ships type thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And you know, and with YouTube too. I mean, it wasn't until I don't really remember drum videos really ever getting made till like the 87, 88. I remember getting like the Steve Smith video with Vital Information. It was so late 80s. Do you remember?
Right.
And it was like Weather Channel music. Remember the old Weather Channel songs?
Yes,
Forecast
yes, I do.
to be.
Yeah.
And you know, but you know, the neat thing is with all the video, there's just such a wealth of information out there. And you know, the thing is, you know, and sometimes there's so many people that are so good at doing stuff, but they're not good teachers. Sometimes because they're not necessarily, like, sometimes they just don't understand. You know, like you'll have a really good math teacher sometimes.
I think. Sorry to interrupt, but I think actually you are a really good teacher. You really break stuff down into an incredibly detailed way, and I think it maybe can turn some people off because they're like, well, just get to the point.
Yes,
but if you because
some people are like, you know,
yeah, but I'm kind of the same way though. Like I give drum lessons and I just really break stuff down to the most basic form.
Yeah.
Literally note by note, because I think that's the best way to retain that knowledge, you know? And
yeah.
I did a Fool in the Rain lesson on my channel where I did it in 2 parts.
Okay.
And you know, and I actually had a guy say, this was his exact words in the comment section, was, great video, you explained it really well, but you talk too much. What the... that doesn't make any sense, man. You know.
Yeah. No, well, you know, people. It's weird. I think sometimes. Well, you gotta remember everybody's different, right? I mean, there's some people are just they don't like maybe when anybody talks a lot, or sometimes they're used to videos where. Well, I mean, there's no. I mean, I talk. You know, I used to be down in the cat. I used to be down at a commodities exchange. So sometimes you'd say things over and over again to make, because if you didn't, it was going to cost somebody a lot of money.
Right.
So I notice in my videos, if I look back and watch them, I will say the same thing 20 times. I mean, sometimes it might help if I just say it 19. You know, there are sometimes I realize I'm like, why, you know. But, you know, part of the
get a little redundant, yeah, but.
Well, you know, you can't underestimate the, it's like if you really saw, like it's really neat watching, like, Bob Ross paint, because you really see him do it from the ground up, right?
Right.
Remember those old cooking shows where it's, all right, we're going to do this, and they cut up a little meat, and then they do 2 or 3 things, and they slide everything off the table, and then they pull out the finished. You know, you really got to see it from the ground up, and I think there's a lot of drummers or anybody who's trying to teach anybody anything, is they kind of forget, like, they'll start their whole lesson at, like, 58% of their 100% skill, thinking that everybody's probably 58, 60%, but some people are back at, like, 15, man, you know?
Right, you almost gotta look like you're teaching somebody that absolutely knows nothing, you know?
Totally.
Doesn't know how to count it out, doesn't know the breakdowns of anything. And actually, I give drum lessons at like a it's like a School of Rock type school where we have
nice. That's a great idea.
But it's not School of Rock. We're actually a nonprofit. We're like,
nice. That's cool,
so we give, like, the whole idea is not to turn anybody away, but you know, nice. All the kids are in groups type thing, and like the top group, the drummer, he was gonna do rock and roll. Right, and he's the type of kid that wants to learn it exact, right?
Right.
Well, okay, I got to teach him this. Guess what? I didn't know the ending, like the ending drum solo. I didn't know how. I just kind of did whatever. You know what I mean? I knew the doop dap doop that doop doop doop, but I didn't know about the the hertas and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm like shit. All right, well, he's going to want to learn this exact. So I go home, I turn on your lesson, and I watch it. And I went, because you explained it very clearly. You broke it down, and I'm advanced enough where I can, like, okay, I can skip past the simple parts, you know?
Yeah.
You broke it down in such a way where it was easy for me to understand, where I'm like, oh, it's really not that hard, you know? Like, a lot of this time, stuff isn't as hard as you think. Now, let me ask you a question.
Very odd.
How are you able to figure some of this stuff out? It's amazing to me. Like, I just don't have that ability where I can sit down and listen to a riff or a lick or something and kind of process it. Okay, he's playing with his leading with his left hand here, that stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, I really don't know because you know a lot of what I did. You know, I learned all that bottom stuff, or most of it, just by ear years before YouTube ever rolled
right,
around.
and that's what's amazing to me. Is obviously, you know,
but you know, I think it's not that uncommon. There's a lot of musicians that that can really hear. Like I was watching a video of Stuart Copeland the other day. And he touched upon it. It's from a few years old. Like a lot of musicians, there's a lot of musicians who can play really well. Yeah, a lot of musicians that play really well, it'd be like if there was somebody who could had a really good skill of reading and then translating it to their mouth like a newscaster.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm in the news tonight, you know.
Right.
Well, that doesn't make them an author. Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Right, well, you know, I mean, that's, you know what I mean? Whereas a lot of people who are great authors who, you know, might not, do you know what I mean? Like, they're too... they're like a Venn dot. They're mutually exclusive things often, and you know, I don't know. I will say this. I got to tell you, it was amazing. Like with George Flutus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, man! Everybody, I swear, it would be great if at one point we could do like a clinic where we get everybody to come, and George and I are there.
Yeah.
It's amazing watching. I mean, George is. I think sometimes the way people are like, well, Terry, you know, how do you, you know, George. And there's a lot of people like you and me. There's tons of Bonham-ophiles out there. But the funny thing about George is he really, you got to be in the room with that guy when he's playing the drums, man.
His drums sound just like Bonham's. Just like him.
But even if he couldn't play the drums at all like Bonham, the fact that he tunes them up.
That's what, yeah, the tuning of them is amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he could have a business where, you know, send me your 6.5x14 Super for $300. I'll send it back.
I would pay it. Probably.
You know what I mean? I tell him that. I'm like, you could do it, man. You probably get at least 20 or 30 of them.
I would totally send him my drum.
But you know, the intro of the rock and roll thing, I never really realized what it was because I always played it exactly how I heard it. So
Me too.
Right. You know what I mean? It sounded like, so if I sat down like 20 years ago, or well, before YouTube, if I sat down and played it, somebody listening would say, wow, that's exactly it. Wow, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I'm just playing exactly what I hear him do. But I had no idea that it was, I mean, I knew that people used to say later, well, yeah, well, it doesn't really start on the one, it's sort of a count in. And you know, sometimes with me, I was kind of like, well, yeah, whatever. I can sit and I can play. You know, I'd tell the guitar player, I'm going to do 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there was a guy, I swear to God, his name was Slade Crabtree. I'm not kidding. I put my first or second video, I'm not kidding, man. My first or second video I put up, remember I put up The Crunge, I put up Cool in the Rain and Rock and Roll.
What a rock and roll name.
I'm not kidding, I swear to God, wonderful guy too, Slade Crabtree. And he sent me a message, a private message to Terry, wow, you know, you're the first person I've ever seen besides myself who plays it properly. And he's like, isn't it funny how it's like the something, something, something? I was like, yeah, but wait, what do you mean? He's like, that it's blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I don't think about it that way. And he was kind of like, wait. He's like, you mean you don't know? He's like, you don't understand really what it is. You just play it as you hear it. He was pretty impressed by that. He was like, wow, that's kind of cool. He's like, by the way, do you want to kind of know exactly what it is? So what he did is what did he do? He wrote it down in such a way. He sent me something where it was written down. And so what I did was I programmed it into a piano roll in like a musical program.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Where you can hit like the piano buttons where it's like, tick, 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 and, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
and
yeah.
Suddenly I hit play and it went, tick, 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 and I was like, no way! So that's how it's from Slade. He's the one that literally turned me on to that. So then do you know what I mean? I didn't realize I mean, I didn't figure that part out myself. I could play it right. Anybody hearing me play it would be like, wow, that guy knows what it is. But I didn't think about it that way, which is the simplest way to think about it.
Right, and it is. Once you break it down, it is actually the simplest way to think about it. Because I always just kind of played, when I play it with a band, and I don't even know if we came in at the right point together. I think we just kind of went a little extra or something, you know what I mean? That when we thought.
Totally.
You know, and then
well, yeah. I mean, if you do it, well, I mean, see, that's another thing too. Like, I'm fascinated with the concept of like, I made videos about this before, but I usually end up getting so ADD that I stop making sense even to myself. Like the beginning of rock and roll, any song that starts out with an instrument playing by itself without a count in, I mean, to me, even still to this day, if I listen to Misty Mountain Hop, I'll hear that first note as the one. So do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I never even thought about that until you mentioned it. I just
that, right?
I just thought that's just. I didn't even think about it. I never counted it. You know what I mean?
What if you go da 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 da? And then it's really cool. It's almost like, in fact, it's exactly like the intro to Take It Easy. The Eagles song.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. You know that? If you're not paying attention there too, that first note that Glenn Fry or whoever hits is the and of 3. But if you're not paying attention to it, if you think it's the 1, it sounds like Henley comes in like 3/8 notes late.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of songs like that.
I got a question from the audience here. Rich Raw Dog Drums. He wants to know about the immigrant song lesson when he spent 5 minutes looking for a shoe to play the bass drum part and found a snow boot.
Oh my God! You know what's so funny? You know that all boils down to me just being too lazy to redo it. It was winter time, and I'm not too crazy about it now, but I'm always like, all right, everybody, I come in the house, you gotta take your shoes off. So I was telling you, I didn't have my shoes on, and then I was like, there are some pedals I play where it's easier for me to play. It's usually easier if I have a shoe on, just because I'm so used to the rubber to metal contact.
Right.
But for whatever, in the sock or whatever I had on, or I can't remember, my barefoot, it was just really, I just wasn't getting the same feeling. So I went and I looked, and over here, and all the shoes were upstairs, and I just thought, screw it. And there's like 3 sets of boots. I still have the pair of boots over there, and I just put the boot on. I don't know. I didn't. It's funny. There's a lot of people. It's kind of flattering to have people find that stuff funny, but at the same time, I think to myself, like, a lot of people find it funny. There's some stuff I'll intentionally like that. Like the video, a lot of people didn't realize that the video about Bonham's snare drum, that was my friend Paul, wonderful guy who I named Paul Allen. He's a real British guy.
The bottom snare drum.
The bottom snare.
I for a second, I thought that was real for about 10 seconds, and I'm like, even like when you were smelling, as soon as you threw him out, I'm like, all right, this has got to be staged. When you were smelling his sweat.
Well, it's funny, man. I have a buddy who's a cop, and I thought about making a part 2 where I'd be like, we'd go, and if we could sneak into the jail, and I'd be sitting in the on the wood bench there, like handcuffed to the bar. You know what I mean? And have
you just blew it. There's 10 people watching this show now.
well, I didn't.
You blew it. You blew it.
No, I know it. It's the thing is, but at some point it'd be nice. Like I talk to George about this all the time. Or my friend Bob, Peisty Bob, or Nate, and there's all that gear is somewhere, man. You know what I mean?
Right.
Up on them snares and stuff, and somebody has that stuff. There's the video. I think you saw the video I put up about Bill Townsend. The fellow who had supposedly bought Bonham's Amber Vista lights.
Yes. I know the video you're talking about.
You know what I mean? And in some books, there's a lot of evidence that's saying it's genuine. He always said it was genuine. The fellow that put me in touch with him 23 or 4 years ago, whatever, said it was genuine. And then other people said it's not. And so again, you just go back and forth. In the Thunder of Drums and some of these other Bonham books, it'll actually say Bill Townsend in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But those drums got to be somewhere, man. And I think the ideal person obviously to talk to would be Jason if we could somehow sit him down.
Jason would know. I'm sure he would.
Yeah.
I actually, I'm an acquaintance with a guy who was out on the road with the Led Zeppelin experiences. I think he was their light guy for a tour.
Nice.
Yeah. I That just popped in my head for some reason.
Oh, hopefully, maybe we'll just we'll chloroform Jason and drag him back to
see what I can
safe
do.
house. Jason, does this smell like chloroform?
All right. I got to ask Earl Bennett's question. I promised him I'd ask you this question. All right. All right. So let me see. Yada, yada, yada. All right. He wants to know, what is your opinion on the black label Peisty 505s versus the green labels? And ask him what really happened with his discussion with the Peisty company.
Well, real fast, I'll say the thing about the original 505s were the original bread and butter, like top of the line Peisties, were Cymbals, and they were made out of nickel silver until eventually Peisty came out with the 602s, which were bronze, the Zildjian, B20 alloy.
Right.
And then in about 1965, they changed the Cymbals to B8 alloy and called them Cymbals 65. So that's essentially more or less your first 505. And the Cymbals 65, at least the one or two I've had over the years, look just like a B8 alloy Formula 602. Like the lathings, it almost looks just like a B8 602. And it seems that the very early green label 505s look just like the very late black label 505s. They really, from my experience, in about 1983, changed just a teeny bit in the sense that, like with the 2002, I don't have one handy right here. Well, the 2002, there's a real fine lathing, which is actually finer than a giant beat a little bit.
The 505 green label I have has a wider lathing on the back. That's the one.
Right. So what they do is they would lay the real fine lathing on a 505 and a 2002 or whatever. The 2002, the secondary lathing is uneven. So like some of the bigger lines will be close together and some wider and some bigger. Whereas on a 505, the space between the secondary lathing is equidistant.
Yes.
And in the later black labels or early green labels, that secondary lathing was real close. Okay. And then as time went about 83, 84, it started getting wider. Do you know what I mean? That's
probably the year I have. Like, it would make sense, like 83, 84. Great cymbal, man. It's an 18-inch. I just bought it off it came with a drum set with about just a motherload of Peisty cymbals. Just a motherload.
Well, what happened with the 505, they really, the 505s, like the 18s and the they're really identically, they're the exact same shape of the original giant beats. The reissue giant beats, remember, at least from my experience, at least if we're talking about the 18s and the 20s, are a 2002 blank that they lathe like a giant beat. Do you know what I mean?
So it's like thinner? Is it a thinner cymbal?
If you see that part of the mojo of a 2002 is that the bell is really integrated. It's a much smaller bell. And instead of like coming down like that and having like an inflection point and then shooting out like that, it's very gradual and then like you know what I mean? Like it's like the best thing to do next time anybody's ever at a drum shop, grab an 18 or a 20-inch giant beat and an 18 or 20-inch 2002 and hold them and look at them profiles. You'll see that the reissues and the 2002s are the same. In fact, from my experience, and other folks I've talked to, if you get your hands on a Big Al 24-inch 2002, the Big Al where he's flipping off, that's actually him giving the finger. I didn't realize in the logo until a few years later. I'm like, hey, that's a guy giving the finger. That's like the exact same symbol as a Peisty giant beat multi. They're like, if you listen to the sound files and stuff, it's like if you get yourself a reissue giant beat multi at 24 and you're like, boy, I wonder what this exact cymbal would sound like if it was lathed like a 2002. Just get the Big Al. They're pretty much the exact same cymbal. But the thing about the Peisty thing is I'm kicking myself in the ass. Peisty Bob, Bob Marzlak was so mad at me because Eric Peisty, the president of the Peisty company, called me one night.
So this is the second part of his question.
Yeah, that's why I know he probably wants to hear that. What happened was I really, he and I really, we had like, and this is like 4 years ago now. It was like September of 2014. He had, he called me one night. He sent me a message on Facebook like, hi, is this the Terry Keating that makes the videos on Bonzoleum and put the PST7. And I said, yeah. And I said, and I thought he was full of shit. So I gave him my phone number. I said, well, if you ever want to chat, you know. So one night my wife and I were watching TV, and it was late. I mean, it was like 10:30 our time, which was probably like 5:30 or 6 in the morning their time. And the phone rang, and I saw, like, you know, when you get a call from overseas, there's like 17 numbers, and the first 11 are like a lot of 4s, 0s, 1s, and 5s, you know?
Right.
And I have a friend of mine that lives.
I don't answer those.
Well, in Finland, Frank Jorma Michele, God love him, I thought it was him, so I answered the phone. I was expecting, you know, hey, Jorma. And there's this real low voice. I mean, he talks like this. He's like, hello, is this Terry Keating? I was like, yeah. He goes, I said, who's this? He goes, Eric Peisty. So you can bet I, like, jumped out of bed. I'm like, you know, baby, I got to take this call. You know, I'm downstairs. And we talked for like an hour and a half, and the next day we talked for like another hour and a half. So for like a week and a half, we talked a lot. Like, he knows I'm a cymbal nut and stuff. But I think what happened was, just to be honest, what happened was I'm really comfortable. I mean, I talk like this to everybody. I made some videos especially for him. He had we were talking about some things, and eventually what happened was I'm really concerned personally about, you know, like these things online like Alibaba and these things where people are able to buy. Yeah. Right, you're able to buy shit directly from a vendor in China. Mm-hmm. That for a lot of American companies, no matter what product it is, that's kind of scary, man.
And you don't even know if it's a real product if you're buying. You know what I mean? It could be a knockoff. Some of these knockoffs are so good you can't tell.
Well, you know? See, that's the thing. I actually, at one point, I didn't say that part to Eric Peisty, but you know, you figure if you know, something that's very high quality. All right, if a company, all right, so let's say you have a Louis Vuitton purse that at a store is $1,000, right? Well, if you could buy pretty much the same thing for $80 from somebody on a New York sidewalk, well, nowadays you don't need to go to New York to the sidewalk. You just go on Alibaba or whatever. Right. You know, there could be like counterfeit Peisties or counterfeit Zildjians, but even apart from that, you know, the cymbals that are coming out of China now, pretty much they're all B20, like the Wuhans and, you know, these like these. What are these? These, you know, there's stuff coming from China because a lot of American companies are name companies. A lot of their lower middle stuff they have made in China. So They go there and they set up the dies and the tools and everything. Well, eventually you're going to have people over there that might steal or copy the dies. You know, it's just not the same over there. They don't seem to really want to protect.
Copyright law is not a thing there.
Right. So my point to Eric Peisty was, well, I said to him, I said, well, Eric, you know, since you really sort of have, you know, the lock on B8 anyway, you know, their sound formulas are B15 and stuff, and Zildjian now uses B12, but B8 really, I mean, Meinl makes a pretty good B8 cymbal, but Peisty really has a lock on B8. You know, I've always said in my videos, Peisty should trademark. They should have T-shirts that say Peisty knows B8. You know, I mean, in my opinion, the reissue giant beats are the best sounding B8 cymbal ever made.
I just got two. Got two.
Well, because they sound really, really nice and warm in the near field, and they also sound really, really nice and warm, and you can hear them in the far field. Whereas, do you know what I mean?
And the 20-inch makes a great ride for like lower volume gigs.
Oh yeah.
I used it on a lower volume gig the other night, and I couldn't believe
this one you have, right?
That's the one.
Yep. That's the one.
Yeah, and it sounded so good on these lower just volume gigs. It's just a really, really nice ride cymbal. All right, I got, he's got more to his question. All right, he wants to know what happened with the idea about the Giant Beat Sound Edge hi-hats.
Well, you know what happened was, and see, I do not lie. Everything I say is 110% true. What happened was, Eric said he was going to make, he's like, oh, I just realized they might have just broken a cable from my microphone. He told me, he's like, I see, my big selling point on those was that, you know, Sound Edge hi-hats are beautiful. And if you ever had an original pair of Formula 602 Sound Edge hats, they're a very relatively thin, delicate cymbal. And if you look at the Formula 602 Sound Edge hats, their lathing is different than other Formula 602s. If you get, that's why sometimes if you ever see a pair, somebody selling a pair of original, you know, from the 60s or 70s or 80s Formula 602 Sound Edge hats, but the top cymbal looks like a regular 602, you know what I mean, with that wider, cruder lathing, it's not genuine. The Sound Edge 602s have a real fine lathing. In fact, it's exactly like the Giant Beat lathing. So my point to Eric was you know, I just thought they'd sound terrific. But I mean, but also too, it'd be a nice bread and butter comparison. Or I mean, you know, an A/B comparison. It'd be like having a Formula 602 pair of 15-inch hats. Instead of being made out of B20, they'd be made out of B8. And so what I have here, I don't know if you can see it, but this pair here. This is a Giant Beat reissue 15-inch top over a 1976 2002 bottom. And you know, I actually read an Eric Price too. I said, even if you don't dedicate a pair of you know, sound Giant Beats, you could just take a Giant Beat top you already have made and pair it with the Sound Edge bottom. You know, it'd almost be like the Zildjian KZ thing of 35 years ago, you know. But what happened was he's like, Terry, I'll send you a pair. And this was right before we sort of had the breakup to our bromance, like the day before. But something happened where I was talking to him about this whole thing out of China, that, you know, Paiste had an advantage because they're really a company that really knows how to make B8 alloy cymbals. And so far, the only cymbals coming out of China that are kind of pose a threat to, you know, if somebody can pay $60 for 20-inch B20 alloy cymbal, that doesn't sound that bad compared to a $380 Zildjian K. There's a lot of millennials out there that don't give a shit about a brand name. They just want to pay for one that sounds okay. And then there's nothing, I'm not knocking the millennial or anybody by saying that. So anyway, so in the process there, when I was asking him, there was a question or two I asked him, which I'm sure he would. I think what happened was after we talked for a while, I think he almost felt like maybe I think he might have thought I was like a spook for a cymbal company.
Oh, okay.
Like he almost like, ooh, this guy is pretty sharp, man. Like I think he's going back to Zildjian or Sabian, which isn't the case at all. I mean, even though I look like a melonhead, I'm actually pretty smart about shit, and I think that just turned him off. And so the Sound Edge Giant Beats never came. Obviously, they ended up never making them, although I still think they should. It'd be really nice if they made, and I've said this in all my videos too, a heavier version of like an 18-inch Giant Beat multi and a heavier version of a 20-inch multi. Just
yeah, because they're a little thin. They are a little thin. You know? Yeah.
It'd be nice to have like a, you know, maybe like a 1,900 gram 20-inch Giant Beat. Or, you know, like a 14, you know, 40, 18-inch Giant Beat. Because, you know, most of the 18-inch multis Giant Beats are in the mid-13s, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. The thins, I mean, I was shocked when they came out with the thin models. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, I thought they were going to go the other way, but they came out with the thin. But in any case, you know, so that's what happened with Paiste. You know, it's a shame. You know, I mean, you know, and I understand. I'm not knocking him. I never try to be disrespectful. I was always hoping at some point, you know, he might realize that I was really just trying to genuinely help him and his company. I wasn't, you know, I don't have any ulterior motives. You know,
well, so if he does do the Sound Edge Giant Beats, it could be a little bit like that episode of Seinfeld with Kramer and the Beach and Calvin Klein. You know, you ever see that one?
I think I did. Yeah,
it was my idea.
Right. You know, but you know, I mean, it's. But
you just fly to Switzerland and angrily walk into his office. And...
Well, you know, it's funny. I mean, I did call him back once because I had his number in my phone. I mean, he mostly called me. But what happened was I called him back one time about a month or two later. I felt bad about it, and I wanted to apologize. And he was like, look, I'm in a meeting, and I'm really busy. And then that was the last I heard of him. So, but anyway, you know, what can you do? You know what I mean? Those things happen. But yeah, I mean, but to me, any cymbal that sounds good, like I've been telling people about these, and I'm not affiliated with anybody, although I did call Zildjian to see if they'd make a pair of 15-inch of the S series.
No, when you call, I gotta ask, when you call these cymbal companies, I mean,
they don't know who the fuck I am. They're very polite. They don't hang up on me, but they're like, all right, buddy.
Because that takes some balls just to just cold call a cymbal company and say, hey, I think you should do this.
Well, I remember I remember years ago when Sabian first came out with the remember there was a year, I don't know, about 20 years ago, and I don't know why it took so long, but the Sound Edge patent ran up. Paiste's Sound Edge patent ran up, So Zildjian came right out with this Master Sound. Remember the Master Sound?
Yeah.
Which I guess they still make. And then Sabian came out, what they call it, just the sound wave, or I forget what was the particular term Sabian calls there. And their Sabian's ripple on the bottom hi-hat's almost identical to Paiste. It's whereas Zildjian's is sort of looks like it's machine hammered in. But I called Zildjian, and this was 20 years ago. I said, listen, I said, you know, you might want to try making those Master Sound hats a little thinner, because the original B20 Alloy 602 Sound Edge hats were really, really thin. I mean, if you remember, the original Master Sound, you know, 15 or 14-inch hats that came out were super heavy. And the Sabian version, the Accelerator is what they call them, were
I don't remember that one. I don't remember the Sabian. I do remember the Master Sound. Yeah, and I guess they do still make them. But,
yeah. Sabian did the Accelerator on their A's and their AAX, and they also did it on a lower line cymbal. I can't remember but yeah, but you know, I don't know. So when I called Zildjian, I called them and I told them they should make them thinner. And I spoke to a lady at Zildjian. I also told her that, you know, since the mid-'70s, their cymbals were too bowl-shaped, and they should make them kind of, you know, at that point, I did. I said,
some poor lady that knows nothing about cymbals.
Well, I said that, you know, if you know, at that point, you know, in 1995, I was before I was really even collecting. You really even had a whole ton of older Paistes that I was really necessarily going after. I had a lot of really, really old 40s and 50s Zildjians. And there's a collector named Bill Hartrick who's like the Zildjian guru. In fact, I sold Bill some really, really good Zildjians 23, 24 years ago. I mean, you're wafer thin, like 22-inch, you know, 40s, 50s. Anyway, my point is that what the hell was I talking? No, I just told her that, you know,
yeah.
Well, you know, they could make, you know, maybe make the shape of the Avitas cymbals like the Ks they started to make in the late 70s. Or, you know, if you look at a K, you know, a reissue Zildjian K, from, you know, they have a much flatter profile. So I essentially said to her, if you ever could make some A's that essentially have the flat profile like the K's you make, that'd be great. And I told her that what I did at the time, and still do from time to time, is the symphonic cymbals, the Zildjian symphonic French. They're like a modern A, except they have a real flatter profile. And I have, you know, I love those cymbals. And then, you know, when Zildjian redesigned the A's in 2014, they did flatten the profile a lot of stuff. Not as much as I thought they would have, but they did change. You know, I think they really did a hell of a job of kind of going a lot more back to the. Again, you know, what Paiste did is they really, I don't think, really changed the shape of their cymbals for volume. They just added more metal to them, whereas Zildjian added more metal and made the cymbals more bell-shaped, so you get more like a tack. I mean, literally, the more bowed a cymbal is, the more bell shape it actually looks like. If you keep bowing it, it'll actually look like a bell, right?
Right.
So, but anyway, yeah. So I called over the years. You know, the guys at Ludwig, I remember called Ludwig and telling them, I said, you know, I don't know why you guys, you know, for years say in your catalogs that the snare drums are just a seamless piece of metal. You know, they used to, back in the catalog, way back in the day, they referred to the Super Ludwigs as brass, but then when they switched to aluminum, they would just say metal. Although when they came out with the acrylites, they did refer to it as aluminum. But then, I mean, I maybe just people just thought aluminum would sound so cheap. But in the early 90s, I said, well, listen, you know, they make aircraft parts and spacecraft parts. There's nothing wrong with aluminum. You might,
right.
And of course, now they do call it aluminum. You know, people love aluminum. You know, I don't know.
Jeremiah Smith, we call him Big Sexy, by the way. That's Big Sexy, we call him. So Big Sexy, he wants to know, have you ever made your own drums, Terry? Have you ever made your own drums?
No.
No.
Not from the. I mean, I did, you know, drill a shell and put lugs on it, but no, I've never made shells. I do have that idea for a snare drum, though. I have the $1 million snare drum idea. It's a long story. You can find the video on my channel. I still think that would work. And in fact, I think a way to make it would be is to put it on a 3D printer. I'm going to ask somebody if they have a 3D printer. Maybe they can make me one on a 3D printer.
I know a guy. He had an idea for a snare drum, and it was actually it was a very interesting idea where he would have it almost like a free floating shell, but it was he wanted to have an outer shell, like an outer shell with kind of like big holes cut in it, and then he would put like you could put like different inserts in it. So if you wanted like an aluminum insert or a steel insert, I thought it was a really cool idea. He started working on it, and I never heard anything about it though. It seems like in practice it might be a little difficult to actually pull off.
Yeah.
Because you would need so much to get the. You would think to get the sound, if you wanted to get an aluminum sound inside of a wood drum, you would have to take so much of that wood out. You know that.
Yeah.
You know, where would the structural stability be to the drum? You know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, in any musical product, sometimes there's ideas that are more gizmo-y or more kind of cool, appealing to people, and they're big for a while, and they're fads that go away. And other things that are pretty significant that do change the game permanently.
Did you ever have a free floating, like a pearl free floating snare? Did you ever have one?
Yeah, I actually did.
Did you like it?
The one I had, I did actually.
I couldn't. I had one. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't get it to sound good. It was always just way too bright to me. I think it was steel.
Well, it was the one I had had a maple shell, and it was more of a piccolo-y one, and I didn't have it for very long. But yeah, I did. I liked it. I mean, it didn't sound like Bonham's snare. It almost sounded like there's a drum sound I really, really like from I forget who played the drums on Robert Plant's. There's a Robert Plant song called Little by Little.
Yeah, I remember the song from like late 80s. Yeah, late 80s. Yeah.
Blah, blah. The drums on that sound, oh my God, and the snare, that's a great drum sound. I don't know if it's like Jamie Oldeker or something, or Richie Hayward or somebody, but yeah, no, I mean, to me, there's all kinds of different drum. I mean, I love Bonham's drum sound, but there's a lot of drum sounds I like. I mean, I love Keith Moon's, the sound of the drums under, the Who's stuff, and God knows, the drum sound of like Alex Van Halen if Alex Van Halen snare sound, he used, or probably still uses. I know they made an Alex Van Halen signature drum briefly that I think would, but Alex always used. They might make one now that might be aluminum, I think, like a Supra. But there was a period of time where Alex Van Halen's signature model was wood, and in those days he always used a 402. But he tunes his drum a lot like almost identical to Bonham's. It's just that he'd really, take the shit out of the top head.
Right, and it always sounded almost like there was no, I remember listening when I was a kid, it always sounded to me like almost like there was no snares engaged.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah. I do love the sound on that first Van Halen record.
I do too.
Alex Van Halen said he hated it, but I Ain't Talking About Love. Oh,
right.
Effing masterpiece, man. It really is.
But his sounds, it's a very different sound than Bonham. To me, Bonham's snare drum sound, and I've been looking for that sound. I've got a 402, and I've been trying to get that sound ever since I bought that snare drum. And I get close, but I can't seem to quite get it,
Yeah, I'm going to have, what we're going to do is George and I will do another Bonham snare drum tuning video, but I'm going to bring somebody along who's like a guru with the TuneBot. So then when we get, or I should say, when George has it sounding as Bonham as you get, we'll just bring this fella in, we'll blindfold him to bring him to the rehearsal room so he can't find his way back. But then he'll get the readings. We'll get actual readings from like from somebody who's so familiar, and just give the, and hand those out to people.
Hand those out, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a TuneBot.
But the thing about the Bonham sound is that the snare wires can't be too tight. You got a rim shot is really a part of it, and you do the top head is deadened a little. Bonham, you can see Bonham did used to use the tone control. Apart from what Jeff Ockelter or some of these people say, Bonham did use muffling in his drums. You can see the felt strip on the ambers and the green sparkle. And on the front head, there's a lot of people like me or us who are really crazy about it. And a lot of those pictures, you can see like a ring on the reso head of pretty much every kit he had. I never really saw it on the stainless, but on the amber and the thermal and the green sparkle on the reso head, it looks like the heads that you see now that are common, that have the these. You know what I
You're
mean?
right, yeah.
And I don't know if that. I always assumed it was maybe just another 26-inch head where maybe they cut around the
piece,
aluminum
like a
collar
ring.
and then
Yeah.
cut about 4 inches in and glued it on or whatever they did. And also 2 newspaper. I remember reading an article years and years ago by John Paul Jones was quoted in it, and I haven't been able to find it since, where he talked about how John Bonham used to put cut up newspaper in his bass drum. And George has mentioned this in his videos too. You can see a picture when they're at Olympic Studios recording stuff for Zeppelin 2 or Zeppelin 3, and Bonham thermoglosses are there. You see the 26, his 12 by 14, just a 16 by 18, just one crash cymbal in the riding hats. I'd swear they were recording, but by the way that looks to me, I know there's a caption where Jimmy Page put in the book they were recording like what is and whatever should be or something, but I'd swear they're like doing Since I've Been Loving You or something. Because if you ever listen to Since I've Been Loving You, you only hear 2 tom-toms and 1 crash the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, you can see in the photograph what looks to be newspaper cut up in the, like settled in the bottom of the bass drum. And if you ever put, you know, strips of newspaper, even crumble up small bits of newspaper and fill it up about that far into a bass drum, you really get that really nice, it's like a whoomp. It's like boom.
You're right.
And that sound, you know, it's just that simple. You know, it's actually a lot simpler than people think it is. You know, but yeah, you know, I mean, I just hope it would be so great, man, if we could, you know, get like that Beatles book that that great Beatles book where that fella had cancer and he went through all the Beatles tapes of all the takes they did and how many, you know, edits they did and all this stuff. It'd be great if there was like a Zeppelin book that like, all right, we did Days of Confused, we did 11 takes, and we comped. Let me put it this way. If Jimmy Page, the song remains the same. Are you familiar with like the Garden tapes and stuff?
Yeah. The bootleg tapes?
Yeah. The song remains the same. The original record and the subsequent remasters and stuff, which by the way, I think Jimmy might have totally, he went way, once digital editing came along, he went over the top with it. But even that original 1976, vinyl or cassette song remains the same soundtrack. You know, each one of those songs is taken from, I mean, they're edited together from different nights. You know what I mean? And if you can bet your ass if Jimmy Page did that for that live record, you can bet your ass there's edits all over the joint on the studio stuff. I mean, there is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely there is. Yeah.
And it doesn't reflect badly on anybody. And I, you know, in video sometimes I'll mention like sometimes an Immigrant song, toward the end, there's like a bar or two that sounds a little faster than the rest of the song.
It's probably punched in.
It's you know Rob Plant's like, what does he say? Despite all you're losing, but right there's like 2 bars. Listen to how it picks up real fast.
Just took 2 pieces of tape, spliced them in.
I think there's a lot that's like that all over the drive. But it'd just be so neat to see, you know, how the Zeppelin records were made. To me, is just as interesting as the fucking notes that are on them, you know what I mean?
Right.
Cool to see how those fuckers were put together, man.
Big Sexy's got another question. He wants to know your thoughts and impressions of Carmine Appice. Now, I will add to this right away. I think he is, in my opinion, one of the unsung heroes of modern rock drumming. Absolutely is. He doesn't get enough credit for inventing the modern rock. So, I mean, Bonham and Pacey obviously get all the credit, and rightfully so. But he was huge in that era. You know, you watch those early Vanilla Fudge videos. He played like a rock drummer. As far as nobody played like that I can think of until him.
Yeah.
Not even Moon. Moon was just, like he's falling down the stairs.
Well, Carmine, I think he got he did get a bad rap for a while because there was a period of time years and years ago.
Everybody thought he was a jerk. I remember people thought he was kind of an asshole. I remember people saying that he was kind of a jerk. I remember Ozzy saying that, he left the band for health reasons. He made me sick and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I never got that impression from him by watching his videos or interviews and anything.
Well, Carmine, he's a hell of a musician, and there's so many. I mean, not
saying all those high parts in the what you call it cover, the Keep Me Hanging On cover. That's him. Yeah, that's him singing all those crazy high parts.
He's a monster player, man. He's a great player. He's a great musician. He also wrote some stuff with. I think Do You Think I'm Sexy? I think he wrote that song with Rod Stewart, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at like the actual copyright, it'll say Carmine Appice and Rod Stewart. I mean, Carmine Appice, he's no dummy, man. I think he's a smart, very talented, great drummer guy. It's just, the way sometimes stuff happens is, he was in Vanilla Fudge, which was, a big band in the late 60s and stuff. But, Zeppelin was just Zeppelin.
And they just, boom. And,
right. I mean, they went right to the top. They were huge. I mean, and Carmine still did other stuff. What did he do? Like Bogart, but he just
Cactus.
I think what happened was probably toward the late 70s. People would probably come up. I mean, imagine if you were just a drummer who, done a lot of stuff, and people always come up like, hey, how are you? Listen, so this guy that you played the one tour with, that tell me about him. Like I felt guilty when I was contacting about 15 years ago. I contacted Paul Thompson, the guy with Bonham's double bass thermal kit. I contacted him online, and I should have come right out and asked him, like, dude, measure the bass drums. In those days, I just asked him if each bass drum was the same depth. He said yes, and I left it at that, And but apparently now, I contacted him again. I asked him if he could measure the bass drums, and he was very friendly at first. Like, well, hey, and I said, would you measure the bass drums? Yeah, sure, whatever. And then I didn't hear anything back from him. And somebody contacted me and said that there's going to be an article in Modern Drummer where the drum specs of that kit, like that thermogloss kit, I think is going to be featured in an article coming up soon, supposedly. And that's why this guy told me that's probably why Paul Thompson didn't get back to me. Because, I've always, me and other drummers, there's always something a little deeper looking about those thermoglasses.
Right.
But I always felt bad contacting Paul Thompson and asking all these questions about Bonham. Because even Paul Thompson, in his own right, he was a great drummer, man. He was in Roxy Music. And that must be hard sometimes. People come up to you, hey, Paul, love you, man. Now listen, tell me about Bonham.
Tell me about him. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
well,
Carmine's people are only human, man. I mean,
he actually adds here that Bonham was reportedly a big fan of Carmine, and that's as far as I know, that's true. Carmine says it all the time. but he got allegedly he got the triplet thing from him.
Well, especially too when you see when Bonham, used to hit when he would like in Days Confused the boom, psh, and he grabbed the his crash cymbal with his left arm. That I mean, he took that obviously. I mean,
straight from Carmine, yeah.
Sure, and Carmine. I mean, I'm sure drummers did that before, probably even Carmine. But I mean, yeah. I mean, that's I mean, but see, in those days, like people now, it's so funny. Like with rock drummers, there's so many people like Bonham. They're like, hey man, what's with you rock drummers? You always want to copy and just copy this guy or that guy. But in anybody learning anything, whether it's sculpting or drag racing or drumming or whatever, you always have a hero that you copy and emulate, and eventually what people do is they go out and they do their own thing. It's only natural and normal to do that, I was in a band, what's that old saying? What is it? Brilliance copies, genius steals, or whatever. Well, I forget what the line used to be, but I don't know. I mean, I think that, I think what happened over time, though, is Carmine might have, he probably read, sometimes if you read responses, in magazines too, they'll come across as more asshole than they might if you saw the interview, like if somebody's smiling or how they say something. Like with text, that's why they have emoticons. So if you read
stuff doesn't
you're
come
not
through good text. Yeah,
it doesn't. And but yeah, no, I think Carmine, a great drummer, man, a great musician. You watch that footage of him, playing in those days. Yeah, he's terrific. He was exactly who he was then in like '68 as he is. He was unique. His own guy, his own artist. And that's impressive.
Right. Getting back to the whole stealing or or borrowing type thing. I always, when I was, I'm sure as you were the same way, coming through your formative years, learning how to play. Like I started playing. I'm 44. Am I 44? I don't even know how old I am. But I started playing drums when I was like 10 or 11.
Okay. Yeah.
So I went through this whole stage of like, well, I really loved Def Leppard, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Then, right. So that's how I started, and then about 13, I got into Bonham and I got into Zeppelin. And that's kind of where like my formative years of learning how to play. I would sit down, in my spare bedroom and play nothing but like Led Zeppelin 2 over and over again, or Play Along the Song Remains the Same. So
Yeah.
all that was imparted into my brain, right? And then I got into Rush.
Yeah, the Rush phase.
Right, I went through the Rush phase, and then I went through that for about, probably 5-6 years, and then I kind of realized that's not who I am. And like I always say, like I play like a poor man's John Bonham. I'm really straight, and I almost have like a lazy behind the beat snare drum, kind of like similar to what he did, where I kind of similarly like play behind the beat.
Yeah.
And it's just, I didn't consciously try to play like that. I didn't consciously like. That's just what came out,
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. Well, that's just, there's part of you that really likes what you hear and stuff, no matter what it is. Sometimes you don't even necessarily try to copy specifically what somebody does. It just comes out because there's a musical part of you that, like, ooh, that would sound good here, and it just kind of does it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like my normal way of playing, if I play my own stuff, isn't really Bonham-y. You typically, I don't think. I mean, if but I appreciate.
I think I do a lot of the type fills that he did. I fill a lot like him. A lot of my drum fills are like him, and that's totally subconsciously. I
say that too. Yeah, my fills, I guess, would probably be the. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it's just but again, it's just Well, the neat thing about like with Zepp is like it is so funny. I mean, I never really had a lot of access to bootlegs growing up, and a lot of the bootlegs that I did end up hearing were like 75 and 77, and I just was never, even though Bonham was always killing it. There were so many times where Plant really didn't sound that good. Jimmy Page was all over the place. So I really couldn't really bring myself to listen to a lot of those bootlegs. And I didn't really hear a lot of the beefy ass-kicking bootlegs from like 69.
The early bootlegs. I mean, there was a period.
Later.
Oh my gosh, they were a machine.
Yeah, they're crazy. Like
there's one. It's like 69. I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but they're playing at the Whiskey. They're playing at the Whiskey, and John Paul Jones, his bass goes out, and it's just, my God, they are so good. I mean, I can't imagine what it'd be like. And I think they were still, at that point, they were still doing mostly covers,
Yeah, they were doing a lot. Yeah, their repertoire wasn't really that deep, so yeah, they'd be doing a lot of cover. You know what's a really good recording I always want to tell people to listen to? It's when Bonham and Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were studio guys on, not Screamin' Lord Such. Oh, PJ Proby, maybe? PJ Pro, the guy from Texas. He has a song called, like, Big Jim or something. Might have been the B-side to, it's from, like, 68. They did it before they did Zeppelin 1. And you got to listen to this, man. Bonham, they're all killing it. But at Bonham, he does, like, a time signature change from, just from a straight 4/4 into you gotta just hear it. It's just and Bonham, when they did that, was probably 20, man, 19 or 20. He'd only been playing a drum kit for 7 or 8 years.
That's what's amazing. That's what amazes me the most is how not advanced. Lots of guys are advanced, but his sense of time. To me, a sense of time is something that it took me years to develop. 30 years before I really understood how to manipulate time. Yeah. He obviously understood that when he'd been playing 7-8 years,
Well, I think stuff like that, some people just get. I have a friend named Ryan, who I've known now for a long time, and I remember he bought his first drum set for me. That's how I met him. And about a month or two later, if you bought the set, he's 10 years younger than I am. He gave me a cassette. He's like, hey, let me know what you think. And he really couldn't do a roll or anything, and he played real basic beats. But he had his time was unbelievable, and still is. I mean, he has like he has just a Bonham-y, Steve Gaddy, Jim Gordon-y sense of time.
Yeah.
He sit right. I mean, it's just like a total built-in studio sense of time, even on those primitive, the band's like dan, but a little slower. But Ryan's just in there in the pocket the whole time. There wasn't one time where he slipped a little and got a little ahead, to be a little behind or fudged. Some people just have it, man.
Yeah,
you can work on it. I think you can fine tune it, but some people are just born with that shit.
No, it's very, very, very true. Like I always like, you can learn chops. You know,
Yeah.
you can learn chops. You can learn all these crazy time signatures, but you have to have a sense of time, and it's just something that you have to have that sense. You can never. Nobody's going to teach you how to manipulate, or how to play behind a beat. You could do it, but to really make it sound good is a totally different thing.
Well, I think a lot of it is, and I've said this in other videos, and I think people, so much of, I think, a lot of people's sense of time is sort of their temperament. I think people who are a little more type A, like, come on, let's get this over with, are people who are going to play a little more on top of the beat, whereas you have people who are really, really laid back.
That's me. See, I'm, yeah.
And I think sometimes, there's probably drummers, I know I do, if I'm going to play a song, and, somebody's like, listen, let's try to really lay back. I'll really sit and I'll breathe. I'll try to get my breathing on. I'll really try to get myself mentally in a very as relaxed position as possible. Mm-hmm. Because then it will sort of, it's just from where you're coming from, you know what I mean? And because my natural tendency is to play slightly ahead. I mean, I play more natural time, like you listen to like live Copeland-y sort of stuff,
I push the time, but oddly enough, my snare drum drags. It's always been that way, and it's gotten better. But it used to drive me nuts when I'd hear it on recording. I'd be like, God, my snare drum sounds like an hour late.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's something where I think that's something you can work on. I mean, if you consistently, I mean, see, that's like with me. I have my left hand. I have a tremor, and if I don't really warm up. My left hand sometimes will just rush. Like I was listening, there's a recording I was just listening to like 20 years ago. I was in a band called Satyagraha, and we recorded a record. And at the time, I was working a lot on my left hand, and I was trying to really incorporate it into like little snare fills and beats and stuff. But I just rushed it all the time. And I just, I mean, you can kind of see it.
No, I'm just, they're saying in the chat, they're asking where my hands are.
Oh, I see.
They're wondering what I'm doing with my hands under the desk.
Like, oh! No,
they're saying, Jeff has got to pee by now. He's just peeing. Yeah, he's pissing in a bottle of Lipton.
Oh, my God. Ain't that the truth? Well, actually, I do got to run in a minute. You can hear the dog freaking out. I can
hear your dog freaking out.
Get all over the frickin' something or other.
All right.
Well, it was great talking, man.
This was great, man. Thank you for doing this. You're the biggest star I've ever had on this show.
I only want my green M&Ms and you know what I mean, my fur coat.
I'll get your check. Your check is in the mail.
Your check's in the mail, buddy. Yeah, no, I know. But listen, Jeff, it was great rapping with you, man. You're a good man. I do.
All right.
Acting me and stuff.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good night, and I'm gonna go finish watching this Brewer Cub game. I'll talk to you guys.
I know. Oh my God. All right, brother.
It's 2-0 Chicago, by the way.
Oh my God. Well, all right. The Brewers are coming up, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Out now behind
they're a game back right now.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm in full baseball mode. So, all right, Terry. Thanks, man.
I'll see you, bro. I'll be in touch later. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
I'll see you. Okay. Bye.
All right, guys. Have a good night, man. I'll talk to you guys later.
Get this. I gotta figure out how to do this.